Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Collecting Cars. I'm pleased to have with me today Charles Fawcett, who's the founder of Twisted Automotive, who look after, as you can just see over Charles's shoulder, the original Land Rover Defender. And if you haven't heard of Twisted, then there's probably something wrong with you. Twisted is like Singer is to 911. I hope that's fair, Charles. But you know, there's lots of copycats out there in the world. But I think you've really established the Twisted brand with Land Rover incredibly well. So thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me on. Great to see you.
No, our pleasure. So we were just chatting before we got online, and I guess, Charles, you're sat in your new showroom now, are you?
That's right, yes, the showroom that we can't open just yet, but we're sat here quite proudly with people looking through the windows. But obviously, COVID rules say we have to remain in here on our own and wait for the green light to open up.
So I've followed you over the last, I guess, is it 6 or 12 months where you've been building out the old cinema. It's a beautiful building.
Yeah, do you know what? I've lived in Thirsk, this little market town in North Yorkshire for must be 20 years, and I've driven past this old ATS building every day. And on one side of the road there's ATS, the other side of the road there's Quick Fit. It's a tiny little town. There's at least one other tyre fitter in the town. And I often thought, you know, surely there's not enough business for all these tyre fitters. And when one of them gives up, I'll try and get hold of the building. And last year we got a nod that ATS were giving up, and we managed to get this place bought, which I was over the moon with. Then I looked inside. There was water pouring through the roof and running through the floor. It was pretty buggered, really. So we set to tidying it up to use it as a bit of a store, maybe a workshop or something. And the more I peeled layers off the walls and looked at the history of the place, it transpired that it's got this wonderful past. And that's where the old cinema came from. It turns out in the 1914, it was a cinema and theatre. And in the mid-30s, the guy burnt it down, apparently. After the fire, they found gramophone records on all the seats that hadn't burned. Gramophone records are apparently really flammable. And so it then became a garage, and it went on to be a bike shop and eventually a tyre centre in the 70s. So we've had, through this really strange year, we've had this opportunity to restore the building and bring back a bit of its history. We've put a cinema screen back in. We've uncovered some interesting bits of wall where people have actually drawn adverts for screen showings and events that went on in a theatre. It's dated 1925. There's all sorts of cool bits. And we've filled it with Defender now. And this is to be our showroom in North Yorkshire.
Good. Well, and we can all pop in for a coffee, I'm sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nice 8-hour round trip from London.
Yeah, the coffee's worth it.
I bet it is. So you're 21 years old already, aren't you? Not you yourself. You're probably less than 21. Yeah. The business is 21 years old. Was anyone doing this 21 years ago? Or were you the first to be sort of out there tuning Defenders?
There were people, clearly, and most of those people, and I could probably count them on one hand, most of them are still there now. There's the sort of the hardcore Land Rover tuners. But what Land Rover tuning meant back then was comp safari, off-roading, mud plugging, challenge events, or perhaps turning a trailer a bit quicker. What people weren't doing was making the vehicle more appropriate to its use. So we came along and, we fitted 20-inch wheels when we probably shouldn't have done. And we fitted seats that were a little bit tight when you got into them, or you had to climb over the bolster to actually sit in them. We made all the mistakes that everybody does through developing and trying and seeing what works and what doesn't. And we kind of found our space, and we found our customer. And the reality is, back in 2000, 2005, people were modifying Defender to be better off-road for the 1 day a month that they went off-roading with the family, and the other 29 or 30 days of the month, it was bloody awful. It was uncomfortable, it was noisy, bearings were failing, pads were popping out. It was, in reality, an impractical vehicle for everyday use. Defender isn't practical in its best sense, but what I felt was there was an opportunity to recreate the Defender to suit what people were actually doing with it. And if 29 days of the month they're driving it to work, let's make it better for that road use. But let's not take away its off-road ability. Let's not take away its character. Let's not make it look like it should be on the road. Let's just make it better for the road. So we made them a bit quicker and stop a bit better and handle a lot better and quieter and put better audio in and a few basic creature comforts. But it's vital that we don't take away what is Defender. And there's a phrase we kind of coined recently, particularly, which is we have to maintain the Defenderisms. You know, you'll still bang your shoulder against the pillar when you get in, and you'll always be able to tell in the pub on a Friday night who drives a Defender because he's got a dirty elbow from having his elbow stuck out the window. You know, these are Defenderisms. These are the reasons we love the thing. We just need to make it a bit better. So I hope that when you look at a Twisted, you see a Defender just an awful lot better. You can see that the right things have been touched upon, but there's nothing wrong about it. There's nothing that makes it insulting or create the wrong type of conversation. It's still got that wonderful Defender character about it, but it just does everything.
When I first came across photos of Twisted, I guess it would have been for me maybe 10 years or so ago, you know, I think you mentioned it, you know, a lot of those early cars that I saw you started putting bucket seats in them and quite sporty steering wheels, and aesthetically it didn't really do anything for me. And then I bought one off a friend of mine in a package of 6 or 7 cars, and it was a beautiful dark blue 90 hard top, which had seats in the back and had all of your sound deadening and stuff. And I drove that car, or that Twisted, and I was blown away. It was such an improvement. My family have got a 2003 110, which I think they paid 11 grand for, and it was one with the side seats in the back. It's probably worth more than 11 grand now because they're loved. But
probably a lot more.
And I love jumping in those and just driving it around the village or shooting, etc. But if you've got to go and drive down to Cornwall for 3 hours, it's sort of you're sort of shaking by the time you've arrived in Cornwall. But a Twisted fixes all that.
It kind of does. I remember dropping one off for a customer in Jersey, and when you do this every day, you sort of lose track of what you're actually doing in reality. But I dropped off for him a fully built vehicle, drove down through the night, jumped on the ferry, delivered it to him, and drove back in his standard vehicle. I could not believe the difference. Going down there, it was one hand, very relaxed, elbow on the console, radio on, just driving, really enjoying the journey. Coming back, I'm not kidding, it was 2 hands on the wheel, focused. You know, you're literally having to keep this thing straight.
Yeah.
There is a huge difference, but you put the two together, they're still just a Defender, and that's really important.
And that's, you know, without going off too much on a tangent, you know, I've been fortunate enough to own a Singer, and, you know, a few of my friends have got Alphaholics and things like that. And a lot of what they do, a Singer encapsulates exactly what a 911 should be, in my opinion. But it's just a better car than you would get if you bought a car from the 1970s. Actually, it's a better car than its base car, which is a 964. And what I love still about the Defender, you know, it is this classless vehicle. And you know, we are all happy probably to have a standard Defender, but when you want to start using it and enjoying it more, and perhaps if you've got the means to invest in it, there are little tweaks that you would make, like adding xenon headlamps, for example, or it would be quite nice to have a leather or an Alcantara headlining or some sound deadening, and all those little things that you do end up, you know, as you say, it's still a Defender, but it really makes it a very different proposition for some people.
I think for me, a lot of the value and a lot of the cost in what we do, stuff you can't see, probably like Singer. You know, Singer have this wonderful style, but they will put so much time into the development of things that we cannot see on that car. We spend a huge amount of time just lining panels up, taking them apart, putting them back together so that things actually fit and things don't leak. And, you know, you jump in a standard one and it suits its purpose of the day. But the reality is, on some cars, you could literally lose your mobile phone under the back seat onto the road because the gaps in the panels are so big.
Yeah.
That all needs sorting, and it takes a huge amount of time to get it right. But it's those things for me, you know, we can see the headlining and we can see the colour of the thing and we can see a bit of leather, but it's all the stuff underneath that's really, really important. That's where our time really does disappear. But yeah, it makes them just such a better vehicle.
So you, I think at the end of the production, you bought 240 original unregistered Defenders. Is that right?
They're all registered. As
Okay.
it happens, 120 of them were registered post-production, or post-end of production. So February to June, they were registered in 2016, albeit production ended in January 29th. We've still got about 60 in storage. We worked our way through them relatively quickly in the first couple of years. We needed to, you know, there was a point we were aiming for with the order. We needed to get through them. It was a lot of money to have sat, a lot of money to have borrowed. Land Rover lost one in the process, so we ended up, I think, with 239. But what an experience being able to buy them and actually see them in 2 sheds and all lined up, and phenomenal. Just,
and
you know,
did you order them? How did that deal come about?
Land Rover, one of the corporate sales guys gave me a call one day and said, Land Rover's policy is changing. They're not going to supply modifiers. And if you remember back, there was this whole thing about supplying Range Rovers to resellers, and they were shipping them abroad to countries they're sending them to.
I think it's still a problem, apparently.
Yeah, it became a big problem back in probably 14, I think, was when it kind of peaked. And it was the same thing with Defender. Land Rover wanted to stop people. They had their own SVO department. They wanted to stop people modifying them and making profits. So they were to change their policy and prevent dealers buying them. Now, we've been buying them through the corporate for probably 10 years. And one of the guys from corporate called me up and said, look, the policy's changing. You're going to have to place an order if you want more cars. So I contemplated it, and we finished up ordering this 240. I kind of felt that the new Defender was on its way, but there was a few years before we would see it. So I wanted 4 years of current classic Defender to carry me through to new Defender, because at that stage, we didn't know what new Defender would be like, and we might have worked with it. As it happens, we're taking a different path now, but I wanted 4 years worth. About 60 a year was what we were selling at that stage and what we were building. So that kind of worked. But when we ordered them, I had no money and nowhere to put them. So we then had a scramble around to sort those 2 issues out. But partway into the order, Land Rover decided we couldn't have them. So we ended up having to deal with lawyers, and it was confirmed there was a contract and they had to supply. But what that meant is the whole order got shifted 6 months, which meant that they had to store them after production had ended and sit and look at 120 or 130 Defender that everybody wanted, and they weren't allowed to sell. They had to wait till they could deliver them to us. So, you know, 120 16-plate Defender, you don't see many 16-plate Defender, and we've still got, I think, 60 odd of them. Yeah. So a wonderful sight and a real opportunity.
So what happens when all those 60 are gone, Charles?
Well, it'd be a very sad day. The reality is we aren't actually using many of them to run our business. The amount of work going into an average Twisted now, in reality, means we have to strip the chassis, we change all of the driveline, we change engine, gearbox, transfer box, diffs, shafts, CVs, flanges, bushers, bearings, brakes, suspension. There's not a lot left. We're using casings and the original chassis and body panels. So we are sourcing vehicles all the time out of the marketplace, and using those as the base product very often. So what we have now, our product line is Born, Defined and Legacy. Legacy is one of our vehicles out of our collection. We're going to build a maximum of 12 a year. We're going to build them, we're going to sell them. The Defined is the spec that we believe makes a Twisted. So there's lots of vehicles out there with eBay stickers on that say Twisted, and they've never been near us. And they might very well have the 20-inch spinners from 2004 on them. But this sticker makes people think it's a Twisted. The reality is, if they've not got the build plaque, it's not a Twisted. It might have been touch bars at some point. It might have our power upgrade or our wheel on, but it's a Defender with an extra. Defined package is what we think makes that Defender Twisted and as good as it can be without being over the top. So we do all the right stuff to it. So we're offering the Defined package to a customer build, and we're building cars to sell that we're going to put into our showrooms. And then Born is probably the reason this all began. Was TD5 Defender back in '99 was this incredible upshift by Land Rover from the old TDIs. It became electronic. It was tunable to hell. You could get 240 horsepower out of this old diesel engine. It's a wonderful, wonderful engine. Really drivable, really usable. And when I was sort of 20-ish, that was the cool Defender to have. So we're now building 6 of those each year.
So you go and source a donor car, do you, and build that?
Yes, yeah. And again, take it apart, parts on the floor, rebuild the thing. It's not a restoration. It's not a concourse build. We're building it how I think a Twisted would have been in the day.
Yeah.
So it might still have the original seats and no soundproofing, but it'll have the most incredible suspension, driveline, power, braking, and all the right bits that work, lights that work, and so on. We've just finished our first one, and I sold it over Christmas. And I drove it for the first time a week ago, and it was literally, the hair on the back of my neck was stood up. It's probably for some people, it's like jumping in a 205 GTI, which was the car they wanted when they were a kid, you know. It just had this wonderful feel about it, and we're just trying to sort of nod at the nostalgia of Twisted, you know, and of the TD5. And at some point in the future, we might move to a different engine, a different model, but we're sourcing the best base vehicles from which to work upon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those 3 cars you mentioned there, or 3 versions of the Defender, you I guess on top of that, if someone can send you a Defender to have wheels done, engines chipped, have it serviced, etc. Do you offer that or not?
Not currently, no. We've not got capacity. I think it's fair to say that over the few years that the business has, I don't want to say it's got out of control, but it's got to a stage where we're trying to do too many things for too many people, and really not doing what we do best as well as we should be doing. You know, the focus has become, we've become sort of distracted almost by lots of customers, where actually we just want to build beautiful vehicles for cool people and just do it brilliantly. You know, we had a conversation a few weeks ago with the whole team, and perfect is a word that gets thrown around too much. Perfect doesn't exist. Perfect is unachievable.
That's not what my mother says.
Okay, maybe you're the exception to the rule, but my mother definitely said I wasn't perfect, and we can't create anything that is perfect. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't exist. But what we can be is brilliant. So, you know, the whole team now are pitching for brilliant, whether it be the way we treat our customer, whether it be the way that we build our vehicle, the whole thing. We just got to do it brilliantly. And I think I've got quite excited about it all again, 21 years in. I just want to build brilliant vehicles, put them in our brilliant sheds, and sell them to really cool people. And
well, I'm pleased you've said that about being excited, because, you know, 21 years, you know, in this in this modern era, millennial era that we live in, of disposable and Instagram, etc. But I really see that energy from you, Charles, and how you purvey that on social media. And when I met you at Salon Privé, that you seem to have refound an energy around your product, which I think is amazing.
I think it's fair to say that if you went back 10 years, I probably 6 3/4 days a week, I loved my job. I loved what I did. It's probably fair to say that 4 days a week now, I love what I do. But I think that's just business. It has its pressures, it has its stresses. But if we can take away that part, you know, who wouldn't want to have a toy shed full of toys with a group of lads that love working on them and creating really cool things? We're really, really lucky to do what we do. And the guys at the factory, they just love it. You know, when we create something new, when we come up with something different. I walked in this morning, there's a crowd of people around a vehicle. I hate to think what it's costing me an hour for them to stand there looking at this vehicle. But it was the first startup of the LT1 in a 90. Okay. Now we've been running the LT1 engine in the States for I think 13,000 miles now in about 8 months, and they've been testing and developing. They're on the 27th reiteration of the mapping for this engine, and we've brought that learning to the UK, and it's in the first vehicle now.
That's the Chevy V8, is it?
Yeah, it's the latest version of. It's kind of the replacement for the LS3.
Okay.
The LS3 is the outgoing engine. We fit it. I think we've done 75 or 80 of them in vehicles over the last 9 years. The first one we did was 2012, and they actually stopped producing the engine a little while ago. They've been on run out with it. So we've developed this LT. It's phenomenal. 8-speed box and 453 horsepower standard. Really, really tunable. So the LS has been really popular. We've found that of late, most vehicles have gone petrol rather than diesel. They're ULEZ free, so you can drive your Defender in London, no issue with daily costs. But yeah, this LT, it's a phenomenal upgrade.
So do you use their transmission as well for that? Does it?
Yeah,
you buy a crate engine and gearbox, do you?
Yeah, engine and box, and a basic run kit, but then there's clearly a huge amount of other stuff to make that thing fit and work properly. You know, cooling pack, aircon, driveline. It's a big old task, but when it's right and when it's positioned right, it's a great upgrade for Defender. It works really, really well. Doesn't feel like a modification. It feels like it lives there.
And you said it's the first one you've put in a 90. Is there quite a big difference when you put this power in a 90, not a 110?
It's the first LT we've done in the UK. The first one we did in the States was 90. With LS, the previous V8, 90 and 110. I've got to say 110 suits the extra power really, really well. It accepts it well. It's a nice length. 90 is just wildly fun, and it needs to be in the right hands. But the beauty of the LT and the development work that's gone on in the States is we're now at a stage, we're mature enough, where the business is big enough to be able to absorb a fairly significant development time and cost, which it couldn't do back in 2012 when we did the LS. So the LS has been an ongoing development, whereas actually LT, I believe it's going to land in the vehicle and be sold and be right. Yeah. Because we put so much development into it, and actually we've tamed it. The mapping has really made a brilliant vehicle to drive without it feeling like it might kill you. Okay. Clearly, there's power and noise there if you want it, but you know, you can tame the throttle response, you can tame the gear changes. There's a few videos on YouTube of it. There's one particular one, and we were probably on software version 10 at the time. And there's a video of a guy's face in the passenger seat. He's out of some race team in the States, And his face when this thing changes gear, he's like, what the hell just happened there? You know, it's bang, bang, bang through the gears. That's no good for every day in a Defender. You need it to be a lot more refined. So we've spent a lot of time on that, but it's going to be a great upgrade.
Good. So we just before we hopped on the call, obviously the timeliness of this interview is quite good, because we had a record price on collecting cars for a Defender Heritage the other night.
Yeah.
We sold it for £70,000 plus buyer's premium. So it continues to show that the love for the original Defender is not going anywhere. So I'm interested to know how the Defender and Twisted are received globally.
Much the same as they are here, possibly with a little more intrigue in some countries, because they're the scarcity value. I guess when we go back 5 or 10 years, 25% of our business was abroad and 75% was at home. It's probably switched now. We're probably doing 60 or 70% overseas from the factory here in Thirsk, and a smaller amount in the UK. There's not really a particular reason. I guess our reach has grown. But what we have done recently is we've set up the North America business. So we've got some guys out in the States that are operating under license. They've put a huge amount of time and effort in and built an incredible team to continue to build the Twisted brand in the States, in North America. And they're also operating the Middle East for me, and North Africa, and Twisted EV. So electric Twisted, obviously a Defender. And they're obviously improving our reach, but they're dealing country by country with the manufacture, build and sale. So we've got a showroom in Austin now, which opened just recently. They're on with a showroom and workshop in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. It's an interesting shift in what are strange times right now. It's great to see it actually developing rather than just sitting still and waiting for COVID to go away. There's a lot of work going on in the background. I think what will happen is we'll see a huge uplift and a lot more traffic once we're allowed to talk to people a little bit more, have some more personal relations with people and show them what we're up to in those new centres.
Yeah,
so
no,
a lot
sure.
of demand. We've got one heading to Uzbekistan shortly, which is the country not many people have heard of. We've built this phenomenal 110 for a great guy out there. He insisted we visited before placing his order, because it seems they've placed many orders for many things and they rarely get what they ask for. So they wanted to establish a relationship before we built this car for them, and we've built this vehicle. It is phenomenal. I'll get some pictures up online over the next few days of it. So that's Uzbekistan.
What sort of special requests do they have to be able to cope with their needs?
This thing is, it's just phenomenal. I can't really describe it, but it's a 4-seat 110 with petrol power, a roll cage, lots of protection kit around it, a full console running straight through the middle of the vehicle with heat and air conditioning and charging pads and all sorts of things. It's beautiful.
It is.
And then this wonderful box in the back, various bits of inscription around it. It's just an absolute monster. Probably I would never build it like that for me, but it's exactly what this guy wanted. Touching on Born, Legacy and Defined earlier, what we didn't talk about is halo builds. And we talked about whether customers can bring cars in for work, and right now they can't, but we are planning to build 2 customer cars a year, but only 2. And that's simply because they take so long. This particular vehicle, we've probably been working on it for 7 months. We wouldn't have done it in any less time. I wouldn't want it to take any longer, but that sort of 6 months-ish for a customer build is about right. We've got the next 18 months of customer builds booked. And the workshop's fully booked with other builds till the end of 21, and we're booking 22. But these customer builds are so finite detail. You've just got to give them the time. And it's all about, ultimately, it's all about value at the end of the day. And we have to keep our numbers down to keep the customers' values up. Your residual value, you know, that Heritage you just sold for 70-odd thousand, that's great news to the market. You know, Land Rover announcing that they're going to build one for 200 grand, that's great news to the market. Us not rushing to sell our stock of vehicles is great for the market. You know, if we release 60 new cars onto the market tomorrow, you could kill the value. So holding back is really important, and always making sure that we keep our standards up, keep the quality up, keep the price up. When a customer wants to sell one, give strong money for it and sell it for strong money. It just keeps the whole thing up there.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say if a second-hand Twisted comes for sale, it's a very popular item.
Yeah, well, funny enough, I sold a car to a friend of mine recently, a Keswick green car, and he was looking for one, and a friend of mine had one, so I quietly placed that into a friend of mine here in London who's also got a Singer on order. So they attract similar types.
Green 110.
Yeah, a green 110.
Yeah.
You know,
very nice car, that one. Very nice. Yeah.
Good. Well, so a couple of other questions that I've got written down here we'll finish off on things that float, but tell us about your impression of how Land Rover have handled the new Defender and how that's been received in the market. And obviously they've just delivering the 90 as well, so they're having a sort of reboot of press around 90. Be subjective, Charles. Be subjective.
You know, new Defender was always going to be a problem. It was just going to be. It was going to be controversial. People were going to get revved up about it. I think, for me, the mistake they made was calling it Defender. If they called it Defender 2, it might have helped. But there's so much passion for classic Defender. For them to say that they have taken nods from that old vehicle and introduced them to the new one, it's just all wrong. They should have just made a brilliant new vehicle and it would have been better received. There is no dispute the new Defender is a brilliant product. It drives really well, it'll tow really well, it'll be brilliant off-road, it'll do all the things you want a modern car to do. But it's a modern car, it can never be that. And I think them believing that they could convince their followers that this new one could be that was where they went wrong. They should have just built a new brilliant car. I will probably buy one at some point. I'll probably use one for work as a tow vehicle or something. But when I borrowed one a couple of months ago, I literally kept away from it until, I don't know, 3 months ago. And Pip and I, my other half, we went to the dealer one Sunday, and he said, "Here, take the keys, go and have a go." So we went off for an hour in this thing, and we kind of sat there chatting. It's a bit like an episode of what's that TV program where they comment on what's been on TV that week. It's like, what do you really think to this? Well, it's a bit boring, isn't it? Yeah, but it drives really well, and you know the doors shut well, and we're talking about all the positives, but we were both kind of bored. There was no buzz about the thing. And
did you have a dirty elbow?
No. I think that's probably what I was missing. It was brilliant, but it had no soul, it had no character. And I think in this day and age, everything's really digital. Everything is really easily accessible. And there is something, for most car people, most petrol heads, there is something about an analog driving experience that gets you really excited. You know, why does somebody buy a 1960s manual Ferrari that's so damn uncomfortable and so unreliable and in reality so slow? Why do they get such a buzz out of that, but they don't buy the new one? It's because it's brilliant. New Defender is a great product, but it will never have the soul of the original. And therefore, I think the mistake from JLR was to try and infer that it would have some of that soul.
Yeah,
So
that's fair enough.
I'm not criticising the product at all, and I'm not criticising JLR, but that they should have had a more defined line between the two.
Yeah.
And you know, it'll be great. The new 90 looks epic. It looks a brilliant car.
It does look good, yeah.
And as I say, we'll probably have one at some point, and we'll use it as a work truck.
Drop an LT1 in it. Off we go.
You just won't, though, will you? You know, they've got a V8 on the way out, and it'll be brilliant. It'll be quick as anything. But will it really excite you? It'll be like every other modern car.
Yeah. Unfortunately, no, I joined the Clubhouse last weekend, which is this new sort of social gathering place, and they were talking about not just cars but watches, etc. And unfortunately, you know, there's a big old world out there, and a lot of that world wouldn't buy a classic Defender for whatever reason. So
exactly.
you know, they're catering for the Chinese market or whatever it might be, the masses. So yeah, and they're leveraging their brand.
They are, absolutely. And I think probably outside of the UK, they'll have a much easier time of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. So
they'll sell a lot of cars.
They will, yeah. So just to finish off, tell us a little bit about Twisted Marine, which you acquired. Was it middle of last year? I think you purchased that.
Yes, we bought a little boatyard in Salcombe, and we bought that because we want to produce a few really cool boats, and we needed somewhere you could dunk them in the water. In reality, brilliant little business in Salcombe. It's been there many years. Marine engineering business, and from there we will carry out the work. We're importing the hulls from the States at the moment and sourcing some in Europe, but in reality we're going to do Twisted on the boat, you know. And
what's the basis going to be? We're not talking about a rib. What's the look and feel going to be like?
I think Don Johnson, white suit, white Ferrari Testarossa, 1,000 horsepower, 80s, 90s offshore powerboat, and make it usable in the current climate. So the style, the look, the attitude of the old powerboat from the 80s, and a modern driveline, modern gear.
And when do you plan on launching the first boat?
We are working now on the first two, and hope to have something in the water in the summer.
Okay.
A lot of development work, a lot of work to go into it, but it's more than a bit of fun. But I've always wanted to do something with boats. We'll see. It'll be fun.
Good. Well, look, Charles, thanks so much for giving us some of your time this morning.
Hey, thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Great to talk to you.
Really enjoyed following the journey of Twisted, and I for sure will find myself in one of your products again very soon.
Come and see us when you can, when we're allowed.
Well, I'm going to come and do that 4-hour round or 8-hour round trip for a coffee if it's that good.
Come on the train, 2 hours 5 minutes from King's Cross.
Perfect. I'm going to do that for sure. Have a great day, and we'll catch up with you very soon. Cheers, Charles.
All the best. Thank you.
Bye.